Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here alongside Mike Gallagher. We've got another 7-game slate, I think a 6-game slate in front of us today. These mid-sized slates early in the week have got me a little on my heels just because I'm used to like big slate Monday, small slate Tuesday. But I think the NBA in accommodating the college football championship last night with like a little bit of a smaller slate. And then also I think in preparation of getting the schedule aligned for Martin Luther King Day on Monday next week, you've got a little bit of a spread out schedule until things start to get like jam packed next week with like big slates and small slates again. So 6-game slate. Once again, we are getting further and further away from health and safety protocols season, thankfully. Mike, you sound a lot better. So how are you feeling today, my man?
I feel pretty good. Woke up feeling like myself almost. Still got a little COVID fog, I think, on my brain, but feeling pretty good. And only one player on protocol so far today with East Ponds for the Grizzlies. So this is hopefully the last few days of it.
Yeah, the Grizzlies have put the Ponzi scheme aside for a few more days. In terms of players that so now we're focusing on injury stuff, which is really what the thesis of this show originally was. We can hopefully do a better job at giving edges in terms of being able to predict player availability and also, tackle what kind of outcomes might look like in the case or the event that players do sit. So let's start on the injury front tonight. Toronto, they've got Gary Trent and Scotty Barnes both listed as questionable. As we know with Toronto, they will play extremely tight rotations. They played an 8-man rotation last game out. In the absence of Gary Trent, they kept it to 8. So this is a team that's willing to play really, really tight. What are your expectations on Trent and Barnes availability? Who would start in their respective places if either or both are out? And how deep do you think we get into the Toronto rotation tonight?
Yeah, so with Trent, he hurt himself in warm-ups and couldn't push off. So Nick Nurse said he was playing through it kind of before and then aggravated in warm-ups. So he's questionable, but we have him in, but it sounds like he's way more likely to miss than Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes has kind of had this minor knee thing. I think he's going to play. He actually didn't close in the last game. It was, believe it or not, Chris Boucher closing over him, which is kind of crazy. And he said it was because Boucher was vital, so it wasn't injury related, which is pretty crazy. So Boucher's been playing well.
Boucher was playing really, really well, and then there was some foul stuff that allowed Boucher to basically Anunoby got in foul trouble, and then Boucher was able to play a little bit longer, and then he just kept playing well, and they let him go. So
yeah. So it should be pretty tight again. If one or both those guys don't play, definitely they feel comfortable with Precious Achiuwa. They put Achiuwa on a lot of smalls on switches stuff, and Nurse talked that up. So should be pretty similar. I thought Steve was pretty bad, and his second to last rotation got cut short there. So yeah, it could be real tight. You see the 43 from Siakam. He's been playing freaking lights out lately. Obviously, Van Vliet coming off Player of the Week. He's been on another level as well here. And Anunoby hasn't quite cracked, a good stat line yet, but the minutes have been there. He's been pretty active. Kind of feels like it's coming. As far as, mismatches go, it'll probably be, pretty Van Vliet centric, even though he'll see a lot of Mikal Bridges most likely.
Yeah, it's with Anunoby, he's always going to be like the third, fourth option in these spots, unless they get a really, really favorable matchup that they can attack with him. So it's going to be inconsistent on the performance side. I will note that Svi Mykhailiuk, the last time that everybody was healthy, was not even in the rotation at all. So he's the guy that if Gary Trent was back and able to play, I would expect Svi's minutes to come way, way down, maybe not even be in the rotation at all. Achiuwa, Boucher, and Birch look like the 3 bench players that they are most comfortable with right now. And I think they could even continue to run an 8-man rotation, even if Trent is back, and just basically have fewer minutes on, all of the main guys, bring them down a little bit, and then, spread those minutes around Boucher, Achiuwa, and Birch, which is just crazy to have like the idea of an 8-man rotation with the only 3 bench players being basically 4 5s. It's a crazy way to do things, but Nick Nurse and the Raptors are willing to try crazy things. And certainly in a matchup against Phoenix, you expect them to lean even more into the starters just because their bench is so Toronto's bench is such a big downgrade. So anytime they play these other strong opposing teams, you're going to probably see the starters play even longer just because Nurse can't trust the bench units at all.
Yeah, and if I didn't add, I think if Trent doesn't play, it would be Birch starting again. He feels really comfortable with that Birch, Van Vliet. Like I said, they blitz stuff and everything, so it would be most likely the same starting lineup if Trent does miss.
Yeah, and then I don't think we're going to see it, but if Trent and Barnes miss, what do you think would be the scenario there that they'd go with? Do you think they'd slide Boucher into the starting lineup, or do you think they'd go Svi?
I think so. I think they like his length to help close out on the perimeter, and yeah, he was playing great. So there's really, no reason to think that he wouldn't be out there. They like him as a 4-5 man now, which was not the case. It was,
Yeah,
he was only playing as a 5 last year, and now he was playing only as a 4 earlier this year, and now
yeah,
he's playing both. So he's kind of almost playing a 3 now too. So
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of confidence from him, which is crazy to see. From, a year later or whatever, like I guess 6 months later, when at the end of last year, early this year, he was really losing a lot of confidence in him.
And I imagine if Barnes was out, that would also impact kind of the need for another ball handler in the rotation. So you'd probably see Banton or Flynn, if not both, kind of get into the rotation. It could be like a hot hand approach with those guys, just because there's not a lot of confidence in either one right now. But I think those guys would be next in line over someone like Justin Champagny, or just who I don't think has the ball handling skills that they need in the absence of Barnes, if Barnes were to miss there. Okay, let's go to the Warriors, where we still have Klay Thompson on a minutes limit. Had the return of Klay on Sunday, which was so exciting. And now we've got Otto and Gary Payton II on the injury report. Draymond Green is still out. All of the sports betting world had eyes on Draymond Green for the last 2 days, waiting to get bets settled on Draymond unders after the reporting came out that he was only going to play, a token start. Kind of a crazy scenario there. Check out our Discord for more information, as most people took advantage of it there. Hopefully DraftKings will still allow people to get bets off after that. But Otto and GP2 tonight with no Draymond. The Warriors are super, super deep, so lots of ways that they can still attack this. What do you think the DFS implications are tonight? And what do you think? Do you think we see Otto and Gary Payton II able to play?
Yeah, not much detail, so we'll see. Probably be game time for one or both. Obviously, they're not going to really need Gary Payton anyways. Now they got Thompson back. They did send Kuminga and Moody down to the G League. I think they called them back up. Yeah, they called them back up, so they would have them available. They may take some minutes off the table. Would open up Juan Toscano-Anderson a little bit more. We saw, I think it was Otto Otto subbed in for Draymond like right away after the 7 minutes when he fouled Garland. So he'd be stepping up. Would also, open up Looney a little bit more, because that would take some chess pieces off the board. Looney played great, man, in the last game against the big Cavs lineup. They would need it, especially if Adams goes. We'll talk about that in a second. But Looney's minutes would be really secure. And then, a little bit more pool, maybe play a little bit smaller if those guys don't play. But Kerr didn't really sound concerned at all. So I think they're going to go.
Yeah, I think Looney's been like one of the most underrated Warriors all season long. Certainly has seen his minutes increase in the absence of Draymond Green. We've also seen Otto Porter Jr. and Juan Toscano-Anderson typically filling that role there. But with the Warriors so deep here, I mean, they played a 10-man rotation if you don't include Dre last game. I think they'll consistently play 10, but they could even go into 11. I mean, they could have put Damian Lee into the rotation as well. So it's going to be hard to pick apart those secondary options. I do think it's a little bit of a coin flip between Otto Porter Jr. and Juan Toscano-Anderson, who starts in this spot now tonight. It might be JTA just because Otto is, a little dinged and they can manage the minutes that way. But those guys I would expect to get into the 20s. Iguodala, he's been out for a while, like in basically playing like a game every 2 weeks and whatnot. And when he plays well. So he got up to 25 minutes last game. He's going to be around 20. Like, I just feel like all these bench guys are going to be around 20. It's going to be really hard to separate them. And with Klay taking a bunch of shots, I think it's going to impact Steph's upside in the intermediate term. So I just think the Warriors are going to be tough guys to play for a little bit until we get like a mass rest situation. And
it was funny after the game. See, you remember the first play when Klay kind of came off that screen and kind of curled to the basket. That play wasn't for him. Kerr said after the game, which is pretty funny. And
he was don't tell Klay that. Klay literally felt all the plays were for him. It's been 2.5 years. Klay is like, no. All the plays are for me right now.
Yeah. Exactly.
18 shots in 20 minutes. Go get them.
42 usage. Love it.
All right. In terms of other, we do have a health and safety protocol situation to monitor today. Steven Adams from Memphis was listed as questionable with protocols, not the conditioning. So I think this is a scenario where, if he clears testing, they'll play him just because he wasn't listed. Like, I think you'd be listed out, like if they had any concern about the conditioning aspect of things. So I think it's just a case of whether he clears or not, which, who knows. They've been able to start Jaron Jackson Jr. at the 5. They can cover those minutes now with Brandon Clark, Xavier Tillman, who they've gotten back out of health and safety protocols. They've got a lot of depth there if they need it. We have Steve Adams projected in currently, but that obviously can change very quickly. Jaron's been playing incredible of late, racking up blocks, doing all the interior scoring that we looked for, the rebounding, which has been from a fantasy perspective a disappointment. When he's been in the league at the 4, he just hasn't rebounded like you expect someone his size to. At the 5, he's been doing all those things. It's also opened up more minutes for Kyle Anderson. You saw him get up into the high 20s, and they've got enough bodies though. They've got enough bodies to figure this all out. Do you have any lean or expectation on whether Steven Adams is able to go for Memphis?
Yeah, I mean, just based on how we've seen it being tracked with getting it reconditioning stuff, I think he's kind of leaning out, but not quite confident in that one. So yeah, as you mentioned, Jaron Jackson has been, man, for years, he's been just so much better as a center statistically from a fantasy perspective. So, not a great matchup against the Warriors and Looney, who's been really good at taking away some interior stuff, but the upside would certainly outweigh the matchup in this spot.
Yeah. All right. Patrick Beverly is questionable. We got an indication from Chris Finch. The beats suggested that they expect Patrick Beverly to return tonight. So it sounds like that will be the case. Minnesota, is basically back to full strength. The other options on the injury report are Balmero and McKinley Wright, who are just not guys that are in the rotation. So we've got Minnesota back at full strength. You've got a matchup against the Pels. That's a pretty good one to be able to attack here. What do you expect? I'm always hesitant whenever Beverly comes off the injury report at his age, with how banged up he is, to go ahead and give full minutes. I would expect there's some sort of limitation that just keeps him from getting into the 30s or even, maybe even upper 20s. I think it might be like a mid-20s situation for Bev. But they've had really a good amount of success with McDaniels and Vanderbilt and those guys kind of filling in the absence of Bev. So how do you think things shake out tonight for Minnesota?
Yeah, expected to play. I did the minutes. I put him at 23. We saw him return from the groin injury last year, played 23, so that's kind of what I was thinking there. They've got the depth. Jalen Noel's been playing well. They've been filling in with Taurean Prince. Obviously, Jaden McDaniels at the 3 has been a good thing, so that's going to come down a little bit. Man, they ran a lot of that Vanderbilt D'Lo pick and roll in the last game, and it lit up the Rockets, which was a new little wrinkle that they really leaned into. Expect a lot of that. So D'Lo's been playing great. They don't need Beverly, so I think they would keep his minutes in check. And we see, Beasley's minutes have been really cut down lately. So they'll be pretty ugly here again. He's pretty much off the board, even droppable if you play season long, shallower stuff. But I don't expect Beverly to get up there very much.
It's pretty interesting that you mentioned the Vanderbilt pick and roll stuff. Like Vanderbilt as an offensive option, he's not a big dude, so he's going to have a hard time being like a great screener. And he doesn't really have any shooting or any post game, but what he does have is verticality. And so using him in that spot, especially when paired with Cat, who can stretch out to the corner, will put a lot of pressure on defenses. It'll be interesting to see if that continues. If that does continue, I would expect, I would expect whoever, Beverly, McDaniels, whoever that other piece is, to be very limited offensively in terms of what they're giving, because, those guys can't run the pick and roll. Dar's a very, very good pick and roll point guard for all of his issues. He's a very, very good pick and roll point guard. And Vanderbilt, you could see the usage spike a little bit. And that would be the way to use him. I mean, it's surprising that it took this long to figure that out, especially when paired alongside Cat. But you have the benefit of doing these types of things with Karl-Anthony Towns because of his ability to stretch the floor out to the 3-point line. So interesting stuff to keep an eye on with Vanderbilt because he's been so good defensively all year. And honestly, maybe in the conversation, towards the lower list of options, but for most improved player this year with how he's played, and been so good defensively. So if you can get anything offensively out of him, now you've got something for Minnesota. And this is the potential way to unlock some of that stuff.
I was surprised to see John Morant is minus money now for most improved player, man. He is just running away with it.
Yeah. I'm torn on that one, obviously. I think he's taken a nice step. I think he's probably going to get unduly amount of credit for, I think Baines improved more than Ja has on Memphis, for example. But I do think that they're going to want to give credit to somebody for Memphis's blow up, and it's going to be their star player, right? So that's the way those things go often. All right, other COVID situations to focus on. with health and safety protocols. Denver, a team that has not been hit by this, and I'm telling you, like I'm breaking out the rosary beads, doing everything we can, like keep Jokic off of health and safety protocols. Not only because of how great it is to watch Nikola Jokic, but I cannot imagine watching the Denver Nuggets play basketball if they don't have Jokic, and how bad it would be. And so no Will Barton is who they lost today to health and safety protocols. They have had some players go in and out, Austin Rivers, Bones Highland. They have had like some players go in and out of health and safety protocols, but they haven't all gotten hit at once yet. Like Denver hasn't been really, they've kind of been left alone on that front. Losing Barton is a really big deal, though. Obviously, in terms of secondary scoring behind Jokic, you come into the year with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Will Barton as your hopes of those guys being the guys. You have none of them now. So Monty Morris picks up some offensive responsibility. You'll probably see Campazzo play more as well, just because they need some extra creation there. Jokic, actually, interestingly enough, in terms of rates and stuff, with Barton off the floor this year, has not been substantially better. His usage rate's been about the same, and his assist rate's been way down, which is not surprising because they don't have a lot of offense to score the basketball. Barton is one of the guys who can score the basketball. So how do you think Denver tries to deal with the absence of Will Barton?
Austin Rivers, I think, would be the main guy stepping up. He played really well in the last game. Malone called him the defensive player of the game. Definitely fits as the wing defender, has some ball handling chops, take a little bit of pressure off him. So I'd expect him to be the main guy. A little bit of Facu, Monte overlap, not a lot. I would expect Devon Reed to get in the rotation, fill kind of the non-Rivers wing minutes there, maybe a little bit more than that too. Gordon also capable of playing a little bit smaller while they play the greens, and then a mix of a little bit of Zeke Naji. But yeah, as you said, not a lot to like besides Jokic here if you're looking for DFS stuff, and unless Rivers is cheap, he probably is.
Yeah, I think you can speculate. I think the upside is questionable. I think in a 6-game slate, though, you can speculate on some of these secondary guys. Monty Morris, Campazzo, Rivers. Like I think there's some worthy speculation there, but not core plays for me. Jokic or bust, kind of. All right, Oklahoma City, your boys. No Kenrich Williams. He's been kind of a glue guy for them. They have their main guys, Giddey, Dort, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. All those guys are available, but without Kenrich Williams, the backup roles become a little bit more mixed because he has been a glue guy, kind of holding things together. How do you think the Thunder respond without Kenrich?
Yeah, they sent Poku down earlier today. We'll see if he comes back. I took him out for now. They don't really need him. I would expect it to be Paul Watson, who we saw step up when Kenrich had that ankle injury. They used him in a very similar role where he was like a 3/4, even started him at times when they were really thin. So I'd expect him to pick up some minutes. We saw JRE play a little bit of 4. We expect that to happen again. Probably start there. Maybe a little bit more Trey Mann, a little bit more Aaron Wiggins. Kind of just piece it together. We know that Dagnall likes to play a bunch of guys whenever he can. So, as valuable as Kenrich is to their second unit, I don't really think there's kind of a big spike to anybody.
Very classic OKC box score there. You can see 11 players in the rotation. All 11 play double-digit minutes, and only 5 get above 20. It's like old school OKC evaluation mode that will drive you nuts from a DFS perspective because it's hard to find upside when that many guys are playing in the rotation. For Washington, they've been impacted by health and safety protocols. They've been getting pieces back here and there. Spencer Dinwiddie came back last week. Now we get Montrezl Harrell back tonight. That's a spot that they should be back to kind of full bore now and full strength. We had seen Kuzma have some big games, getting some center minutes. The rebounding spikes without Harrell, those will go away. They've also got Hachimura and Bertans that they're kind of working in the rotation. They have a glut at like the 4 or 5 positions now that they have to kind of figure out and roll through. This is a team that I would not be surprised to see being active at the trade deadline just to kind of clear some of this roster glut that they have in the 4 or 5 space. So Harrell's return, I think this just kind of knocks out a lot of the upside of any of the Washington guys because I think there's just like too many bodies here to figure out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, lose the upside from the Gafford High stuff. I do think that Harrell's minutes will be down. He's had major conditioning issues earlier in his career. Obviously, he's a lot better now, but you miss this much time for being unable to keep your conditioning up. I think it affects him. So I think it's unlikely he gets to mid-20s. So I think I put him at 19. Yeah, maybe a little bit of Kuzma in there, but really the big thing is you see these bench minutes, man. Like Bertans, toast. Denny Avdia, who was
Yeah.
playing real big minutes, he got cut down. After the game, Wes Unseld said he wants to kind of keep it at like 9.5, doesn't want to go over 10 like
Yeah.
ever. So, I mean, all these bench guys are done.
Yeah.
They're like unplayable right now. Holland Neto got some minutes, but he was terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's still a little bit of upside for Kuzma. Obviously not nearly as much, but he's playing a ton. We see 38 minutes.
Yeah.
He's driving more. He's he's putting the ball on the floor a bit more, so his role is really good. But yeah, as you mentioned, not quite as much upside because Harrell's a little bit more involved offensively.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Aaron Holiday get the shaft out of the rotation last game. Kispert had been behind him most of the year, but Kispert brings a different dimension to him. And when they have all the ball handlers / defenders like back, they can afford to do that. But it's going to be tough to invest in the Wiz until either injuries strike again or they clear up the roster a little bit because there's just too many bodies for the amount of minutes that they want to play. Let's go to New Orleans, where they will get Josh Hart back tonight. Thomas Satoransky's questionable, cleared. We don't know if he's going to be able to play or not. I don't think it's a big deal for him. Getting Hart back, having Hart, Ingram, Valanciunas, those are the main guys, along with Herb Jones and Devontae Graham. Pretty clear delineation in their roster. The guy who's fallen off this year has been Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who people had high hopes for in terms of being like that, secondary scorer. Just haven't seen it. So Pels with Hart back. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, lose a little upside on Herb. Herb's been freaking awesome lately. So Hart coming back will cut down his usage and ball handling a little bit. He's been like driving and like even bringing the ball up off rebounds lately. It's been crazy to see him blossom offensively. Obviously Garrett Temple goes away in a big way. We'll see if Nickeil Alexander-Walker could do anything. He is really down in the dumps right now as far as usage and just anything really. He's been like so droppable and like season long stuff. But Satoransky is cleared, but Willie Green wouldn't commit to playing him. They don't really need him, obviously, with Hart back. So it's pretty much an ignored situation there.
They're enjoying getting a look at Alvarado too. So like it's one of these things. These teams in transition sometimes like Satoransky's better than a lot of the guys that are going to play, but they don't care. Like they want to get looks at some of these other guys. So he might not make it back into the rotation. In terms of some new injuries, Phoenix will be without Cam Johnson. They'll get Landry Shamet back. So that should sort of even things out there. I know from a rotation perspective, I was working on the minutes for Phoenix, and one of the big, pressure points on the rotation is just like, how do they try to cover these Cam Johnson minutes? I think Shamet coming back in will immediately take some of those. You mentioned that they had some comments about wanting to try Jalen Smith at the 4. So imagine he'll get a look there. You might get Elfrid Payton back into the mix. Obviously, they got Ayton and McGee back last game, but you can see in that game they only combined for 38 true center minutes against the Heat, who play smaller. They're willing to play Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, those types of center lineups. Harder to do that now without when they're down one of Jay or Cam. They can do that with Jalen essentially too. So I think this is a spot where between Jalen and Elfrid Payton and Shamet, I think we have something like 46 minutes, something like that between those three. If something condensed on one of those guys, they could be interesting, but I kind of doubt it's unlikely that it condenses on one of those guys. So otherwise, I think it's going to be the normal Phoenix guys that you're looking at, and the loss of Cam Johnson will just kind of get spread around, increasing the upside of the other guys.
Yeah, just when Jalen Smith, after the game, before we found out that Cam Johnson was hurt, Monty Williams said they're trying to figure out ways to play him at the 4. And as anyone who's ever watched the Suns, like he's a terrible 4. And he's been a pretty good 5-man for them. So they want to kind of develop him into that role. So I think he's a favorite to pick up minutes. You really can't lean into it with Jay Crowder and the front court guys back, though. But I'm very interested to see how it goes against, interesting matchup against the Raptors. So a little second unit rotation wrinkle that I'll be watching tonight for sure.
Yeah. And then the last news item that you just wanted to mention, just picking up, press conference notes from the coaches. You'd mentioned that Ty Lue in our notes here has indicated that there will not be a minutes limit for starters that have been coming back from reconditioning. Batum, Reggie Jackson, Zubats. They have, the Clippers played well last game. So like they kind of blew out the Hawks. Sunday matinee in LA, always a tough spot for the road opponent there. But it's possible that we start to see these minutes condense a little bit more for a Clippers rotation that's still trying to, basically just survive in the absence of Paul George.
Yeah, Mir Coffey's been awesome too. But yeah, as you mentioned, after the game last time against the Hawks, Ty Lue said that he's finally playing without minute restrictions on his starters. You remember before Reggie Jackson went into protocols, he had a quad injury that kept capping him. You were wondering, where is the ceiling at? and that was why. Also, obviously, Nick Batum, he's been limited for pretty much the whole season, but you see him getting 30 minutes in the last game. Played pretty well. We know he's kind of a
that feels around the high end, like 30-32 feels like the high end for Batum. So it feels like we already kind of saw that in the box score that Batum was off. But Zubats in Reggie, I think, are pretty important there, and Marcus Morris too. Marcus was dealing with a little bit of foul trouble last game that limited things, but yeah, we could see kind of the return of like a solid 9-man rotation from the Clippers, which we just haven't.
That's kind of what I projected.
Yeah, which we just haven't seen of late because they've been battling injuries. They've had guys, with minutes limitations and different things like that. So we kind of saw that last game. They got 2 minutes, of literal scrub time with Jay Scrub, Keon Johnson, Xavier Moon, and Wenyan Gabriel. I think you take those 4 guys out. You've got the 9-man rotation with Bledsoe, Mann, Boston Jr., Ibaka, Zubats, Morris, Batum, Reggie Jackson, Coffee. I think those are the guys. I do think there's the potential for any one of those guys, like we saw Mann and Coffee be the guys to get into the 30s last game. I do think it'll be a little bit hot handy with those rotations, but good to know that there's no hard minutes caps on any of these guys going forward. Any other news or information on the injury front that we want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, I think we got it.
All right. That'll do it for myself and Mike. We will be back again tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern in front of the paywall here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, like the video so we can continue to push this around, get more attention and more eyes on the content that we're providing. We'll continue to provide that great free content that you guys come here each and every Monday through Friday to check out. If you are a premium subscriber, we will have established a show behind the paywall today at 5:00 Eastern. I believe that is you and Wiggins.
Wiggins and Gary, but I might pop on. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah,
I might be down for a little.
Wiggins and Gary today. I have a riveting singles match tonight for tennis. My first singles match in a while, so I'm pretty excited. So I will not be on the show because I will be stretching for hours and hours, as a nearly 40-year-old man should before he goes and plays tennis. So thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the games tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern. Best of luck.